Welcome back, everyone, to Moonstruck right here on Right Radio. I'm your host, Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about color theory, specifically color psychology, which is essentially the theory based on that changes in the color spectrum affect emotion. So, with that, we can see some kind of distinctions in traditional society, even with things like driving, for instance. Like, people get higher insurance if they drive a red car or whatever, right? It seems something like really silly, even based on like this principle, but it has some kind of correspondence to kind of the mechanistics of how we perceive color. So another thing we can see is, like, why they tell us, oh, don't look at your phone before bedtime. It exposes your retinas and your sensory perception to blue light, which is artificial. So traditionally, before we had phone screens, for example, we wouldn't be exposed to stuff in that wavelength frequency when it was time to go to sleep, right? So, but now, since we have like cell phones and we have all these artificial light sources, we're constantly bombarded with blue light at times that would disrupt our circadian rhythm. So we'll kind of just get into maybe a bit of the physics of it too. So, like, traditionally in physics, you have two phenomenons, one known as redshift and one known as blue shift. Redshift is typically how we look at things like, and I know we've talked about in recent weeks, things relating to astrology and cosmology, astrophysics, whatnot. So one of the ways we actually determine whether stars are getting closer or further away from us, or celestial objects, is the light around the object will appear either red or blue. And red means it's moving away from you, and the wavelength extends. And if it's and the frequency gets lower because the intensity of the energy is getting lower. And if it appears blue, that means it's moving towards you, and the wavelength gets compressed and the frequency is higher, meaning that energy output is higher relative to the observer who's witnessing that. So in essence, we could see some principles too around just the way color operates in the spectrum, such as, well, what makes up a color, for example, right? It's a lot of times what people don't think about too much when we think about color. Like, I'll look at, this, and, it's color black, and we'll think, well, it's, well, even though like black's technically a shade, maybe this is not actually the best example, but typically the concept is it's absorbing all the frequencies of light in the spectrum, right? So when you see something white, like the sign over here, that means it's taking on no light. It's taking on none of the outside frequencies. It's reflecting all that light back. So it's kind of similar to the concept of the pyramid. When you shine light through the pyramid and it breaks into all the different frequencies in the spectrum, you're taking white light, which is a combination of all the frequencies, and splitting it apart so you can see all the frequencies in the spectrum. So when you look at something like we can see here, with the color wheel, or color theory 101 as it says up here, it really is color theory 101 we're talking about. This could be like a course, actually. So, like, for example, you have green, which is typically something that's a soothing, nurturing color. What do we typically associate with green? We associate nature, we associate nurturing, almost that natural, nurturing energy of the planet, right? Same reason grass and the plants are green and the trees are green. So, and everything in the forest that, provides us oxygen to breathe is also green. And the opposite of that is red, which is the very direct color. It's almost that that straight up direct aspect that, is associated with emotions like anger, that, in some cases it could come in handy, such as like when you're in the gym, like, there's a whole bunch of trends going on now where guys are being like, dig deep, and like, I'm totally on board with that. Utilize that fuel for something in terms of development. So the point is that all of these emotions in their respective environments have a place at the table here, right? So it's not saying like, almost as it would depict in Star Wars or other, I guess film, that, anger is somehow dirty. I think that if every emotion has its place, if it's used properly and if it's used in a respective environment. So in a sense here, we can essentially see that green is essentially the absence of the color red, and vice versa. And you can see this with, purple, and it's the absence of yellow, or if yellow is being absorbed. If you see basically an object that is purple, it means that it's absorbing yellow light, it's absorbing more yellow light. So it has a absence of that color in the spectrum. And this is kind of imperative to one of the concepts we talk a lot about spirituality and on this channel and on this show, and it's a concept of balance and harmony and unity between things. When you take away energy from one side, it must come from somewhere else. It's almost like in math when, you're doing algebra or whatever, the equation must be balanced on both sides. You take away something from one side, you have to take it away from the other side, right? So same principle here with color theory, that if you deduct something, you have to have that energy pulled from somewhere, right? So that's essentially kind of the basics of this aspect, where we look at the different colors and how they correspond with one another. And maybe we'll go to the next image up there, and we can see here in fundamentals of colors, you have the primary colors, secondary colors, and it's not shown on this one, but there's tertiary colors, or whatever the term is, which is essentially the third aspect of colors. But primary colors, you could see red, yellow, blue, and it's interesting when we talk about, like, as we said, moving objects in space. You have red shift and you have blue shift, but there's no such thing as yellow shift, which is interesting because yellow shift would mean it's not moving either way, right? But it does kind of represent, yellow does kind of represent that in-between space where something is not moving in the spectrum. So interesting note there. In any case, we have secondary colors too, kind of a little bit self-explanatory, same kind of principle, but they're vibrating slightly different, but they correspond to each other, right? Or should I say they have this almost triangular correspondence with another. So as you see, primary color will relate to a secondary color. So, red and green will relate, purple and yellow will relate, blue and orange will relate. And that's kind of explanatory too. Next image, and I think this one is the one. Yeah. So tertiary, I don't know how it's pronounced, but you get the idea. There's essentially that third category, which involves a more specific aspect. So this is a bit more in depth, just in terms of the diagram depicting kind of the three outlines of the colors. And maybe we'll go to the next image after this. And this one is actually, we'll spend a little bit more time on this. I bumped the mic there for a sec. So here we see the colors, but we also see specific aspects or pictures associated with each, right? And labels. So you can see when somebody's associated with purple, it can be associated with royalty, mystery, imagination, justice, spirituality. Spirituality is a big one for that, actually. And then with red, you can see passion, love, action, energy, strength, excitement, it looks like up there. And it's pretty explanatory that each color will relate to a specific aspect of emotion, and those in turn we can associate with things or things in the external world, such as, if I say tree, you're probably going to think green in your mind because almost every tree that you see has green leaves, right? Same thing with the grass, right? You're automatically going to associate that with green. It's interesting that some stuff that does not necessarily have that color to it, we still form that association with, such as if I say ice, you probably associate that more with the color blue, but ice is not blue, but blue has this cooling aspect to it on the mind. If red is almost like this fiery energy, and maybe from red even to yellow is this fiery energy, then green to blue and all the colors above are almost in this cool end of the spectrum, right? So it's kind of interesting to note that we still do form those associations with things that maybe don't have that direct correspondence in the sense that they are represented by that color also. A little bit of a side note here, just in terms of today's topic, but in terms of when we talk about, chakras and energy centers and stuff like that, we can traditionally see that a lot of the foods, I didn't pull up a picture for this today, actually, because I didn't think about it till now, but a lot of the foods actually that we eat, the colors are traditionally associated with the chakras. So like, when they talk about third eye, they say eating blueberries is good. Blueberries, of course, full of antioxidants, so it helps detoxify the system. And the pineal gland's function is not only very sensitive, but it has this almost aspect where when it's in balance, it's almost like everything else is in balance too, because it's almost the ability to cultivate your focus clearly. So those kind of things still have that association, right? Cucumbers can be associated with the heart chakra because they're green. Raspberries, the root chakra, and so on and so on. Lettuce, also the heart chakra. And even it's kind of interesting to note too that when you see something that is more in the realm of something with slight acidity like oranges or lemons, they also translate to those centers. And what are those centers typically associated with? Well, orange is the more citrus, that is almost that nurturing energy, that's almost that balanced aspect of citrus, and then yellow is that almost more intense, like a lemon almost, that is that has that higher acidity, that's able to detoxify the system. Sometimes you see guys who are going to the gym put like lemon in their water or whatever to help detoxify the system and change the pH value in the body to assist with that. So there are all these aspects that kind of play a role across the spectrum. And it's interesting, I was just talking to a somebody who is he goes to the church that I sometimes go to. I don't go to church regularly or anything like that, but this guy here is essentially has a master's in physics and in theology, and we were talking about the concept of colors yesterday when it came up, and we got onto the subject that sometimes when you have a favorite color, for example, like blue, and then your favorite sports team that you like later on ends up also being blue, or the things that you end up liking also turn out to be of that same color. It's interesting how that happens, that you form the association with the color in life, and then it relates to things that translates into what you are more geared to, or what you have a tendency to like more in the external world. So I'm not saying that because you like the color you will automatically like the sports team or whatever, but I'm saying more so as in typically when you have a favorite color, it seems to overlap with a lot of the other things you like, regardless of the association. Almost like I'm trying to think of an analogy, but almost like it's not so much one thing causing the other, but both things causing each other. So, and it again, a lot of the times, like when we think of things in terms of, well, well, the time association in terms of causality really doesn't make that make sense. But when we're talking about something like light, an aspect that is really beyond time, we're talking about stuff that almost doesn't make sense anymore. Because going back to Einstein in the previous videos, it talks about how light is this cosmic speed limit, and when you approach the speed of light, or when light is involved in something, you're dealing with the warping of reality to bend things like space and time, right? So it's interesting. I really find it interesting, and I always think it's an interesting question to ask people what their favorite colors are, especially like if you're on a date or something like that. And it does sometimes give you a lot of insight into who that person is. Just something as simplistic as what their favorite color is, right? So we both have the favorite color purple. What do you know? So in any case, my point is that traditionally you can make overlap with other things just based on a color, and regardless of its a direct association where it's like 1 + 1 = 2, or it's like some kind of abstract art form that has no association, but you can draw the same conclusion regardless. So in essence, though, that is kind of the gist of that. So as we can see, there are some other drawings around the outside here that are corresponding to the aspect that describes not just the emotions, but the aspects that are associated with each. I'm just trying to... The image is a bit further away from me than it is probably for you guys viewing on the screen. So a love associated with like pink and red traditionally. Also this aspect of almost art a lot of the times associated with red. So sometimes red is also associated with creativity. And again, like there's... oh, look at that, like that's perfect. So yeah, you can see that so even pink associated with creativity as well, and softness. A lot of times we'll associate the opposite sex, like women or feminine energy, with pink, and we'll associate masculine energy with blue. Why do we do that? Well, I don't know, it's just in the nature of the color for the most part, right? It's like you can't really explain why it is, it just is. So it's kind of just interesting when you look at those subtle things. But yeah, and blue, success here, purpose, that's a big one, and yellow, warmth, fun, joy, happiness, and the sun we see as yellow, or more so in the yellow spectrum. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that we're not moving away from the sun, or we're not moving really towards the sun, but we're just in the same orbit around it. So it's almost that concept that we talked about with yellow shift, right? There is no such thing. So kind of self-explanatory. Maybe we could take that back down. Thank you, boys. I don't know if there's one more that we have up there. One last image. Yeah, so here we see it just kind of outlined differently, with the different colors up there, and then orange, optimism, positivity, and all these different aspects. But concept really that I'm alluding to today is that sometimes even simple things like color can be I wouldn't say the most complex, but the most fundamental to aspects. One of the things me and that physicist were talking about the other day, and I'm gonna try and get him on the show actually soon to talk about some concepts. So you guys can know it. It's coming from a guy who's gone to university and he's got his master's in physics and got his master's in theology. So you're not just hearing it from me, but also from a professional. But one of the things we talked about was the principle that typically the simplest explanation is most likely the one that is correct. So a lot of times I think that when we overlook things like color, which are very basic to like human nature, I think that it's a little bit of a misstep because color can influence the way we think and feel quite a bit. One of the reasons why I wear black and mainly black all the time, and the only other really color I wear is white, even though those are technically shades, is because I think that those are complicated enough. I don't need to involve any other colors in my wardrobe. Black and white are complicated enough by themselves without mixing colors all around. So if you wonder why I wear black, mainly that's one of the reasons. So yeah, it's very interesting to kind of think about this, especially in terms of things like seeing red when you're angry, or associating things with like blue with being awake or aware. You even see like at nightclubs and bowling alleys and stuff like that, they have like the I don't know if it's the ultraviolet light or the black light, whatever, and yeah, so like the almost like a neon blue light and keeps you awake, keeps you up, disturbs the circadian rhythm, but it keeps you having fun until you're ready to go home. So it's there's really that aspect that is being implemented into society as well. Same thing that businesses do when they create logos and whatever. To make you feel a certain way about the corporation. So don't mistake anything. All of these aspects that are not built on nature, such as what we talked about with the trees being green, associating ice with blue, whatever, all the things in terms of the business world and corporations and nightclubs and all these places that are associated or use these laws of color, it is used intentionally. It is used on purpose to make you feel a certain way about that corporation or that idea or that advertisement or whatever they're trying to feed you. It's done on purpose because doing that influences the buyer, the listener, the viewer, reader, whatever, to think and feel a certain way about that product or about that corporation. So, if you were running a business, wouldn't you want to use every aspect, even the simplest ones at your disposal, to get whoever it is to buy whatever? I'm guessing so. So this is a really fundamental aspect to some of the stuff that they use in business psychology and stuff like that as well. In any case, I just wanted to mention that just keep in your mind that almost everything in reality that you see around you is done for a reason. Almost like I really believe that there's two ways of looking at reality. Is almost everything is by accident or nothing is by accident. And essentially it really means that base your awareness on kind of the perspective on life you want to have. It either means that everything behind it has a meaning that you can then implement to improve your life somehow, or you have to be affected by nothing as an individual and you just have to be who you are regardless. And I feel like those are the two almost like intense ends of the spectrum on life. It's almost like the difference between like blue and red here, right? Or just to make an analogy, I'm not saying it's exactly that parallel, but in a sense. So that is the gist of color theory, really. And I'm kind of surprised I was able to get all of that in, I think we're up at 24 minutes right now. So I would say that that is the gist of what I have for you guys today on color theory. I am interested to know if you guys do appreciate these shorter form videos, if it helps you stay more engaged with the topic, what have you, or if it kind of depends on the subject. I know things that we talk about in physics typically require a bit more time and a bit more depth to get into, especially when we talk about things like time travel, wormholes, and, temporal paradoxes, all that. So yeah, I think maybe we'll have some interesting episodes coming up. I'll see if I could get that physicist to come on, and I'll maybe see. I thought that maybe getting our friend Lon back on at the same time might be a pretty interesting experience. So, in any case, I think that we'll wrap up color theory there. I would encourage you guys to follow us on DC Media Hub to help support us. Follow me on Instagram at top_sorcerer. I encourage you to like and subscribe, share this video with friends and family to help support the channel, and share information about this stuff. So when they are moving around and moving through the environment in their life, they can be more aware and implement some of these things themselves. If you found any of this video helpful, if you have any suggestions for the future, leave it in the comment section below. Also, check out my other channel, Sword of Mercury, where I do kind of similar topics in ASMR format. We're almost up at 300 subscribers on that channel, so I am very appreciative for all the support I'm getting over there. And I do cover similar topics such as black holes, wormholes, time travel in shorter format, and I illustrate it on the whiteboard. So check that out if you are interested in anything in the realm of physics, philosophy, spirituality, or anything along that line of thought. And I think that is it for today. Once again, I'm Ryan right here on Riot Radio, and signing off. We'll see you guys next time.